Welcome to a new episode of the Chunkies. Hey, here comes Miss Braces as herself. And please welcome Test Officer Brackets as grumpy as he comes. And the one, the only random person as the developer, the creator of the app. Today's episode is Keeping Tests Healthy with Dumb Distancing. Hey, here comes Miss Braces. Isn't that Test Officer Brackets? Hey, miss, where you headed like this? I'm just delivering some minor changes to production. No problem. May I see your DOM, please? No problem. Yeah, sure. Looks good to me. Thanks, miss. It's all fine. You can go ahead. Since the beginning, the app has been using 3 inputs for setting the date, day, month, and year. One day, the developer discovers type date input and also date pickers, but they were too complex, so he just gave up. What's that? Date input, sir. What? Well, never mind. I don't care anyway. I'll just have to run my checks. Where's the year input? I can't let you in if I can't check the year input. But sir, it's just an implementation detail change. The behavior is still the same. I can't make any difference. I'm just following orders and checking what I am told to check. I will also ask you to step back, please. It's the developer who changed this. Are you questioning our creator? Yes, that's my job. He created me for that. What can I do? I really have to quickly deliver this to production. I'm sorry, miss. I have to report this to the developer. Really? Officer Brackets calls the developer. Your Honor, we have a 1037 situation here. What should we do? Can't you see I'm busy? How many checks are wrong? 13. Okay, display. Wow, that's a bunch of complex tests. We have no time to fix this. Let's disable the whole 13 checks for now. Really? Those were our last remaining tests. I understand. We'll fix this later. Just replace them. Thank you, Lord. Ha! I'm going to production. Who's going to production? This is the end. Hey, everyone. Hello. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. I hope you're enjoying the show. So, my name is Younes. I'm the creator of marmicode.io. We help companies through coaching and workshop and courses around different topics like on the web, like Angular and testing, extreme programming, stuff like that. Very passionate about extreme programming. I'm also a Google developer expert and a co-maintainer of JS Cutlery, which is a bunch of libraries around JavaScript, NX, Angular, and tools like that. Go check it out. It's could be helpful for you, maybe. And I'm also the co-organizer of Angular Lyon, so it's just local meetup. And today we have kind of a full agenda. So we'll start by checking the moral of the story we just watched of the Chunkies. We will see how we can solve some kind of problems with page objects and also alternatives to page objects. And I have a little bonus for you at the end. And also some key takeaways to summarize the whole talk. So the problem with testing in general, when we're testing components, is that we can quickly couple tests to code. In the example we've seen in the show, we have the test that fetches some elements in the DOM, like the input here by ID. And the problem there is that when we change the implementation, the test will break because it will not be able to find the element. This could be easily solved with like a variable or a function in a test. But the problem is when you start having lots of tests with like container components trying to test their self, but grab in some elements in presentational components and stuff like that, see how things are working. And we don't want to couple the test to the implementation, because when we have lots of tests that get coupled to the implementation, we only have 3 options. So the first option is to throw them away, because we don't have time to fix them, so we just throw them away. So it's probably not the best solution. The second option is to fix all the tests every time we make a change, but this can come with a cost. And the third option that you might not think about, but which is the most common, is to not touch anything. So you want to refactor the code, you want to restructure some parts and stuff like that, and you're like, if I change this, it's going to break lots of tests, so let's keep things as they are. So if our tests are coupled to the implementation, we will not find the courage to restructure our code and tidy up stuff. So we have to figure out some way to get future-proof. What I mean by future-proof is to be change-friendly and bring new changes easily in the application, because apps changes, needs can change, and you know how it is, like a user story appears, then it disappears, then there's another user story. So how can we do that? The general idea is to bring an abstraction. This way we can decouple our tests from the implementation. But which kind of abstraction? We have to figure out something. So what about test attributes? What are those? The idea of test attributes is that it's just best practice. So instead of having IDs, we shouldn't use IDs because they're supposed to be unique in the page, and or instead of querying like an element by tag and stuff like that, we use a special attribute for that, like data test ID, which is a common one. I personally don't like it that much. I prefer to use data role because it's more generic and less polluting. You don't add an attribute just to indicate that this element will be to help your test, but it's going to be helpful for other situations like scrapping if you need it, or I don't know, like some health check on production and stuff like that. But this is not an abstraction. In fact, once you get the element, what kind of element is that? Is it an input? Is it a div? Is it a text area? We don't know. So you might interact with a value property or with something else, and this could change. This is an implementation detail. So data, blah, 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 is a good practice, but it's not an abstraction. We need to find something better. So what about page objects? So what's that? A page object is, supposing you have like this 3 inputs in our component, and the test that wants to test this component somehow, we will bring next to the component page object, which is kind of a toolbox that will help tests interact with a page. This could look like this. It can be a class, it can be functional, it's up to you. And a page object would look something like we'll have a method, we can pass the parameters we want, it can be typed, that's cool. And then the page knows the implementation details, and it can interact with them. So if we change the tests, if you change the implementation, we just have to change the page object. We don't have to change the tests. And the test becomes not only less coupled to the code, but also it can be more readable and easier to write. So this way, the test just has to instantiate the search page and call the methods that we want to provide on it. So problem is, our web apps are not just pages. So lots of pages share different components in common. Lots of pages look a little bit the same, but they have some differences and stuff like that. So the idea in the web today, with all the frameworks and custom elements and web components and stuff like that, is that a page is a tree of reusable components. So if a page is a tree of reusable components, then a page object should be a tree of something. I like to call this something a glove. Okay, I like to name it like that. And a glove is an abstraction allowing tests to interact with components while keeping them clean from the implementation detail. That's my definition of a glove. So how can we implement that? What would be a glove? How can I implement a glove? So a glove would be like a page object. So it's, as you can see, it's a class with a search page, search glove class with the same method set filter date that interacts with this whole page that I have here, or component. And inside, I'm not interacting with the date input directly. I am interacting with a filter glove, which is another glove that interacts with the filter. So I can reuse that filter glove somewhere else. And the filter glove has a host selector, for example, which is like a static property that can help me find the glove in the page. So it's also an implementation detail of the filter. And it can provide couple of methods to interact with it. Okay, so we have the search glove that interacts with the page, and it's composed of other gloves that interact with other components, and they can also it will have the same hierarchy as the component hierarchy, a little bit the same. And what is this .get? I don't know if I have time to answer this question, but I can't give it up. So this .get is a kind of a magic here because it's not implemented. So what's underneath? Well, it's hard to implement because depending on what kind of tools you're using, depending if you're unit testing Angular with the test bed with Jest, or whether you're testing with Cypress, you will not query the page in the same way. So with the test bed, you will use the fixture debug element query, but with Cypress, you might want to use Cypress get because it has all the chainable stuff and retriability, which is really cool. And so I have the test environment is different, so I might need an abstraction on that too. This way I can reuse my harnesses in all kind of tests. And so that's where Angular CDK brought component harnesses. It's an implementation of gloves. Okay, so harnesses are gloves. It's just that the word harness, I found it like too broad, and I was looking for like a more specific term for this, so I use gloves. But harnesses, Angular CDK component harnesses, are implementation of gloves. So why did Angular CDK bring this? So Angular CDK implemented component harnesses because they have a project coming, and they're probably working on it. I don't know the details, but Angular material, as you might know, has its own tests, of course, because it's really well tested. And they also have their own implementation based on Angular. But Google also provides this MDC, which is the Material Design Component Library, which is plain vanilla JavaScript. And it also provides adapters so you can plug your framework on it. So Angular material will drop the native the Angular implementation and will use MDC components. So it will bridge with the MDC components. As users of Angular material, this won't change much for us. But for the Angular material tests, as they are tests, they will check like specific details of the component to see if they are displayed. But if they query an element like, I don't know, in a date picker, the element doesn't have the same tag or the same attributes now that we're using MDC. So all the tests will have to be rewritten. And of course, Angular material doesn't want to rewrite all the tests. So the idea of the harness is that not only it provides a glove that abstracts the implementation detail of the component, so you provide a harness for a component, it will also interact, it will not interact with the DOM directly, it will interact with a test element, which is an abstraction that depends on another abstraction, which is the environment, like the test environment we're using. And the Angular CDK harness provides different implementations. So the first implementation is the test bed environment. But there's an environment and test elements for test bed. They also provide an implementation for Protractor if you're using Protractor, but as Protractor is deprecated, you will want to move to something else. So JS Cutlery provided an implementation for Cypress. So it's called JS Cutlery Cypress Harness, and it's an implementation that allows you to reuse your harnesses, any harnesses like Angular material harnesses or your own harnesses in your Cypress tests. How does that work? So see, you have our search glove as we had before, but this time it's going to be harness. We will extend the component harness. That's how we implement a harness. You inherit from component harness, which will provide a couple of helpers, which is really useful. And the first helper we will have is the locator for. So the locator for is a method that allows you to query a harness or query an element. You can pass any selector you want, any CSS selector you want, to find the element you want in this component, in this instance of the component. But careful there, locator for doesn't return the object, it returns a factory, okay? So the factory is a function that we will put in this property, private property called getFilter, that we can use later in our test to grab the element when we need it. And so what we will change is that instead of calling this .get I don't know what, we will call this .getFilter, and this will find the filter in our page, in our component. And careful though, this is asynchronous, so getFilter returns a promise, so we'll have to use async await. And another warning here, don't forget the last await, because otherwise your test will continue meanwhile it's trying to set the date. So you might have some race conditions there. Anyway, now how can I instantiate this harness? We can instantiate this harness in our unit test with Jasmine Karma or Jest or whatever. With the test bed harness environment, this will give you the instance, the first instance of that harness. You can look for multiple harnesses if you want. You can do whatever you want. And we can interact with the harness and call the set filter date or the get filter date method, and then do our assertions as we want. And if you're using Cypress, we can use the Cypress harness, the Jest Cutlery Cypress harness, and you can grab the harness and use the same methods, but this time the Cypress harness environment we provide will return a chainable harness that you can use with the Cypress method, like should and stuff like that, which is quite cool. And now the problem we have, and that's it doesn't have anything to do what I'm going to tell you here. It has nothing to do with the harnesses, but I'm going to, in the demonstration, I'll be using this, so I'll tell you something about it. The problem with testing in general is that either you unit test with things like Jest, or you do end-to-end tests with tools like Cypress, for example. But the problem with unit tests like Just that they have lots of advantages, but the problem is that you're blind. You can't see the DOM. So you end up console logging the elements inner HTML and stuff like that, which is not a really great developer experience, in my opinion. And the problem with Cypress is that it's made for end-to-end tests in the initial idea. And so you have to load the whole page, and you can't just load one component. But since Cypress 7, you can do component testing with Cypress, which means you can import a component in Cypress, whether it's Angular or any other framework. You can import a component and instantiate it in Cypress and test it in Cypress in isolation from the app. So how does that work? Well, Cypress provides implementations for React and Vue. The Angular implementation is work in progress. We're working with them, but we started with our own implementation called Jest Cutlery Cypress Angular, and we'll provide our changes to the Cypress environment. And you can mount the component of your choice instead of visiting a page. You can import your component and mount it, and you can test whatever you want on that component using harnesses, for example. We also provide a schematic that helps you set up the whole thing. And if you have any issues, go ahead and open issues on our GitHub so we can help you. And the other cool thing that you can do here is that you can override whatever you want, and you can override providers, you can import other modules and stuff like that. That was a little parenthesis in the topic. So let's go to the demo, and let me put my coding apron so we can do this properly. Okay, so here I have an application that we've seen with the search filtering that filters meals by date and stuff like that. And we have a date picker component that works like this. It's using a reactive form, and it has like the 3 inputs we've been talking about. And I have 3 tests here. I have an end-to-end test with Cypress. So I'm just visiting the page and I'm grabbing the meal search harness and interacting with it. So I'm checking, oh, do I have 5 meals? Yes. And what meals do I have from the 2nd of June to the 4th? Yeah, it's not May, it's June. Okay, we have 3 meals. And I have another unit test here. This is a component unit test. And here I'm checking that by setting the filter. As you can see, I'm using the harness. And by testing the filter, I'm making sure that the output, the filter change output, is triggered by the filter component. I will share the link to the source code so you can see how this is implemented and stuff like that. And we have another, the cy.spec, our component tests with Cypress. This is exactly the same test as the end-to-end test, but in this case, I'm using mount. So I'm mounting the component and I'm testing the same things. So, and of course, if I want to, I can override the providers and import other styles and override whatever I want. Okay, now let's look at the tests. Ooh. As you can see here, I have, this is my, oh, my computer is lagging with the screen sharing. Well, anyway, it shouldn't take 700 milliseconds. And so this is my Jest component test. This is my Cypress component test. And this is my end-to-end test. Everything's working great. And now I'm gonna grab another implementation of DOM distancing to date input implementation, the one that we've been talking about in the previous slides. And so the date picker implementation here is different. It has one input. It's the date input. And as you can see here, it's just one. Oh, it's super small. And I'm trying to zoom in. As you can see, I have a start date, but this time it's a small, tiny little date picker. And my component tests, my unit tests are broken. My component tests are broken, and my end-to-end tests are broken. If I had to fix the 3 tests here, I wouldn't have time, and I'd be to finish the talk, and I would be sorry for Daniel, and he would have to cancel his talk because it would take me half an hour to fix the test. But thanks to the harnesses, I just have to grab my date picker harness that looks like this. And instead of this, I am going to serialize the dates with some ISO string. Oh, this is hacky. I have to grab just the date part of it. And then I will set the input value of, and I'm grabbing the elements by role. It's the date input, and I'll have to pass the row date, and I can get rid of these 3 inputs. What's wrong here? Yeah, it's just too slow. Process. Oh, yeah, here we go. Of course, this should be faster, but my computer is dying. Maybe I have time to go grab a beer. I don't know. Okay. So the unit tests, yeah. Again, this should be way faster, but you probably can hear my computer thingy spinning. Okay, so the whole 3 tests are working. Now let's grab the material date picker implementation. So this time I switched to the Angular material date picker. This is how the app looks. Wow. I think someone is Bitcoin mining on my computer. Ugh, too slow. Anyway, too slow. So, okay. Sorry for that. Oh. Anyway, so the tests are broken as I wanted them to be broken. And oh my God. And my last step here is this time, instead of grabbing the element like this, I am going to grab get date picker input. And so locator for mat date picker input harness. So Angular material provides harnesses for everything. It's really cool. So here I can await this dot get date picker harness. I have my harness here. And as you can see, I can call a couple of methods, has calendar, get placeholders, calendar open, pretty helpful. Otherwise, you would be struggling hours to see how can you check if the calendar is open or not. And of course, it has set value that takes the row date, and you can give it the whole date. It works. And I can I can get rid of this. I can also get rid of this. And of course, don't forget the await, because you have to wait for the value to be set. And hope. Let's see. I shouldn't have to refresh. I just have to refresh because there's an issue when the tests don't compile, and it should be solved. There was a PR recently. I don't think it was released, but it was fixed on Cypress. And kaboom! Unit test is passing. Cypress component test is passing. This should take like 100 milliseconds or something, but it's taking 5 seconds on my computer. Oh God. Okay. Well, anyway, so you get the idea, and you can try at home, and you'll see how it works. Okay, so the end-to-end is working, and you can see here. I hope this won't crash this time. And you can see here I'm having the date picker, the material date picker input this time. So that's it for the demonstration. Let's get back to the slides. And so the key takeaways. The key takeaways here is that you have to consider the test development time and the test maintenance time, just like you consider write test time versus application code time. Should I write a test or not? And if I don't write test, then it's going to be cheaper now, but even that's not sure. And I will have lots of maintenance, lots of bugs, and the cost will just rise exponentially. So you have to consider the test development time and the test maintenance time, which means it's up to you to decide if you should implement harnesses or not, because it will take you some time to implement harnesses, especially at the beginning, because there is the learning curve. And but afterwards, you're gonna get used to it. You're gonna like it. And of course, it will make the tests maintenance way easier, especially that you have an abstraction that could make the tests easier to read. Now, the other key takeaways here is that you should travel light. So maybe you don't need to implement harnesses for everything. So implement harnesses for shared components like your design system, or that component there which is used like everywhere, like the filter, the meal filter, for example, as in my app. Or also if you have components that are used in multiple tests, they're not shared. It's a component which is used somewhere, like it's a search component or something like that, and that component appears in lots of testing scenarios. So if you have end-to-end tests and unit tests that interact with the same components, then maybe implementing a harness is a really good investment. And the last thing is to keep your gloves or harnesses, if you're using harnesses, to keep your gloves simple and stateless. You don't want to start debugging your harnesses, because that will kill your efficiency. So that was all for today. I just want to share some other information with you. So if you go hang out on marmicode.io, you'll see what we do. We have like workshops around Angular testing, APIs and stuff like that, architecture. I also provide coaching. So the idea is to help teams get more efficiency with, I don't know, with project architecture, or how the team works, how to do pair programming, efficient pair programming, how to work in a single branch and stuff like that. Like some extreme ideas, some other ideas less extreme. So we can work together if you need help. And also you can check out on courses.marmico.io. I'll be sharing the links. I'm working on some online courses with this setup, with the cooking and everything, around testing, Angular, and architecture, and a lot of stuff. So let's keep in touch. You can find me on Twitter. You can email me if you have any questions, or if you need help or everything with anything. You can go to marmico.io. There are some blog posts and stuff like that. And here's the link to the slides. I didn't export them on slides.com yet, but the link is working, so it's a work in progress. I'll do it tonight, I promise. So just add it to your bookmarks, and we'll check out tomorrow. It should be there. Especially there will be links to the source code if you need it. Also, this is a special code you can keep. It's ng-glob Summit 2021. It's a special code that will give you a discount on my workshops, my upcoming workshops. So use it, and feel free to share it. And special thanks to you for watching, listening, taking time for this. I know, like, it's lots of information all the time, like all the talks and everything. It's really appreciate that you take time for this, for learning. Special thanks to Edward here, who's working with me on JS Gallery, and he's very good, and he is very responsive to what the community asks on the issues and stuff like that. So special thanks to him, and special thanks to Miles from the Angular CDK team, who took time to answer a lot of questions I had on the Angular CDK, and that was very helpful. And special thanks to Geekle for hosting this great event. And that was all from me. Thank you very much. Oh, bye-bye.